Hi, Grandma. So I understand you had some questions about atherosclerosis and how it progresses and what treatments are available to treat it. So to start off, atherosclerosis is the most common form of arteriosclerosis, which is the thickening and stiffening of the arteries that provide blood and oxygen to your heart. Now, the artery consists of actually three different layers. This includes the tunica intima, the tunica media, and the tunica adventitia. In arteriosclerosis, we're most concerned with the tunica intima because this is where low density lipoproteins, also known as LDLs, which is the bad type of cholesterol, accumulate and lead to the formation of fibrous plaques called atheromas, and this leads to a narrowing of those arteries. Now, the formation of that plaque is actually consists of three different phases. The first phase is type 1 plaque, and this is when proteoglycans, which are proteins located in the extracellular subendothelium matrix, interact with apolipoprotein B100 and LDLs, and this causes an uptake of those LDLs by endothelial cells, and they start to accumulate along the intima wall, which is that inner wall of the artery. And this leads, eventually they accumulate to such a point which leads to type 2 plaque, which is where macrophage foam cells start to accumulate along the walls, along the intima wall. Now the macrophage foam cells, if you remember, are like the garbage collectors of our body. They engulf debris and they engulf LDLs to break them down and eliminate them. So they start to accumulate along the intima wall. And this is actually the phase where you can start to see the damage to the naked eye by there appears fatty streaks along the arterial wall. And eventually it leads to type 3 plaque, which is where the macrophage foam cells start to die and they start to merge together to form lipid pools. And this leads to type 4 plaque, which is where those small pools of lipids grow to such an extent that they start coalescing together. And this is when it actually forms the atheroma, which is that plaque. And in type 5 plaque, you start seeing a thickening of the arterial wall, and this is thought to be the body's natural response to walling off the contents of that atheroma. So the artery starts to thicken and starts to grow outward. And eventually it can grow outward, so it starts to grow inward, and this is the development of type 6 plaque, which is where your artery starts to grow inward because it's walling off that atheroma, and eventually it forms fissures in your intima, and this leads to hematomas, and eventually it leads to a complete blockage of that artery, resulting in a cutting off blood and oxygen to your heart. Now I'll have a visual here to show you those 6 different phases of plaque. So here you can see the artery, and you can see the 6 different phases. This first phase over here, you can't really see anything happening, is when the cells, the LDLs, are starting to be uptaken by the endothelial cells. And you can see it starts to progress where eventually the lipid pools start to form. And this yellow mass down here is the atheroma. And as you can see, it's leading to a thickening of the wall, starts to grow outward. But eventually it can no longer grow outward over here, so it starts to grow inward. And this is where you see the fissure, the hematoma, and a complete blockage of that arterial wall. So what treatments are available to treat it? The first intervention is lifestyle interventions, which consist of dieting and physical exercises to lower your LDLs and prevent the accumulation of that plaque in your artery walls. And then there are pharmaceutical treatments, which include taking statins which inhibit cholesterol synthesis and decrease LDLs in your blood. And then there is an extreme treatment in the form of surgery, which there are various kinds. One kind is where you actually you try to open up those artery walls by inserting rotational burrs, surgical balloons, and stents into that artery to open that artery up. And I have a figure here so you can see what that looks like. So as you can see there, you have the narrow artery, and there's these 3 different types of treatments to open it up. The rotational burr, the balloon, and then the stent up here. And then the most extreme version of the surgery is bypass surgery, which is where they actually take blood vessels from different parts of your body, healthy blood vessels, from your legs and your arms, and they actually insert them in the area of your heart where the artery is blocked off to create a different blood flow path of blood to your heart to provide it with oxygen and blood. So Grandma, I hope that gives you a better idea of how atherosclerosis